Yeah, but my unit, it was served along close to the Syrian border, up from the city of called Hid all the way to the Syrian border. Unfortunately, we saw a lot of combat, and you know, for many reasons, we didn't have the equipment that we needed, as well as I think even the services that we needed when we got back. A lot of us were dealing with PTSD. And in my unit was a combined, we were reservists, we were a combined group from Nuevo Mexico and Ohio, which is a great combination, some New Mexicans and old Mexicans actually, as I like to joke, and some Ohio white boys getting together. It was a great, only in the Marine Corps we had a good experience like that. We did have a lot of immigrants even within our units, and they were tough Marines. From not just not just from Mexico, but also with some from Pakistan, we had some from Africa, and they were there fighting with us with illegal green card permits. I had actually heard about this from another Marine, Tomas Robles, had brought this up to me, I think soon after my election, and he told me maybe at some point there's going to be a forum regarding this. And also, in general, once Tomas brought it up to me, I've been looking out for there's been articles about this in the newspaper, and I could go further into my thoughts about that. But do you want to do the full? Let everyone introduce themselves first.
Just let everyone mention.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, no problem.
It's on.
Hi, how are you? My name is Jonathan Solórzano. I met Luis Cárdenas when I was in law school, and when I started law school, I got involved in a lot of things. But one of the most rewarding experiences for me was working with Luis and IABA, hands-on helping veterans and being out there on the streets, like the pastor we had. That was a good experience, and I loved it, and I became passionate about it. I graduated last year in April, and I've been at an immigration firm for 3 years now. My parents are from Sonora, Mexico. They're immigrants themselves. And every time I see a client in front of me, I kind of see my parents. I see my parents' eyes, trying to do things legally. But unfortunately, right now we have an immigration system that doesn't work, that takes too long, that doesn't give people, like the people you saw in this video, an opportunity to do it the right way. So I specialize in finding creative ways to do it legally, but to get it done. And that's what I'm passionate about, and I'm so happy. Thank you for inviting me.
Hello, my name is Julian Natividad. I'm currently the judge advocate at American Legion Post 41. I was raised in peace, and Post 41, it was created right after World War II. After the veterans came back, they had no voice. They were limited in what they could do. No jobs, nothing. So we're very proud of the history that Post 41 has in itself. We have a tremendous amount of leaders. And I must say that we have some members from Ruben's office, Mr. Marcus. Marcus just signed up with us, so he's a member, and of course Ruben.
That's been very years. What the heck? I thought you were going to throw me out.
So I said, Ruben signed up, you've got to sign up. But I can relate to the confusion as far as the court system. It's very tough to work your way through the system unless you have someone to lead you in the right direction. During the time when I was working in the courts, criminal courts, warrants, if you didn't speak English, warrants were issued immediately after you walked out the door. They would basically tell you, they did not have an interpreter. They would tell you to walk out the door, go get someone to help you. And if there wasn't an employer that was willing to help, we could have had maybe 100, 200 warrants. And I'm thinking about that when this gentleman mentioned that. That's been corrected, and there's a lot of injustices that have been corrected, but it was not corrected overnight. And it's a very complex situation that we're in, and I'm glad that we have the right people in the right positions to look into these things.
Thank you, and so we're going to jump right into the discussion. We heard several older deported veterans state that during their enlistment, immigration or at least a naturalization process was not something that was really talked about for them. So what we're trying to find out here, in the direct discussion to you, Mr. Medina, was this an issue that was common back then, or are we looking at a couple of isolated incidents here where it was just a few veterans that didn't get the info? Did they not get the memo, or was that common practice?
Well, I'd like to kind of put context. For many years, I think we have to remember, for many years, immigration wasn't an issue at all in this country. That border was fairly open, and people would be going back and forth. And so there was veterans that would join with proper documentation as legal residents. But the reason citizenship wasn't as important for, and emphasizes it is now. Now, if you're in the military and you're a legal immigrant, you're going to be asked about, and encouraged for you to join the expedited process. But, a lot of this new phenomenon, this crackdown, started all post 9/11. And prior to that, you had a lot of immigrants, especially Latino immigrants from Mexico, that didn't consider becoming citizens because it wasn't, the border wasn't as militarized as it is, and didn't really go back and forth. And this is a recent phenomenon. So a lot of our brothers that did get deported, I think, there's some from Iraq and Afghanistan that are now, and that's because there's also a problem with the border where we're expediting so much the process for deportation that we're actually taking away people's due process and rights. And that's how you're seeing these veterans getting caught up. And that's a problem with the whole immigration system too, but we should especially, I think, be particularly sensitive to our veterans because I think there's a veteran that mentioned in your video that they connected their problems to their service. And I understand that I suffer from PTSD, and a lot of my other brothers suffer from PTSD, and many of us self-medicated ourselves when we got back. And unfortunately, some of them did end up with DUIs or getting into altercations and getting, assault charges and things of that nature. And luckily, it hasn't been any of our residents, our Marines with primary residency. But the idea of double jeopardy, that you're getting punished twice, first with your PTSD and now getting deported for your service connection is particularly distasteful to me.
Yeah, and on that subject of how immigration policies have affected the veteran community, Mr. Sorosano, I know with a lot of the veterans that we spoke about, they mentioned this law change or this law that happened in 1996. Could you explain that law perhaps a little bit so we get some context as to what it is that they're talking about, what the actual law was?
Sure, yeah, I think they're referring to the Immigration Responsibility Act of 1996 under President Clinton. What happened then is they wanted to get a little bit tough on immigration. There were two bills going through where one was, secure borders, and the other one was what to do with the people that was here. So they merged, and part of the deal that had to go through was that they would penalize people. If you're here 180 days, if you overextend your visa, for example, if you're 180 days, but less than 360 days, less than a year, and you're deported, you're banned from applying for 3 years. If you stay here for a whole year after your visa was expired, then you're banned for 10 years. So if you're banned for 10 years and then you try to get back in, you're banned for an additional 10 years. So, what happens in 20 years? Life happens, right? You can't be waiting 20 years to get the paperwork done. That's why we get so many people crossing back and forth and paying, people to get them here. But that's an unfortunate side effect of that law in 96, and it's when a lot of these problems started to really escalate.
Constantly, we know you're recently elected, so maybe it hasn't come up too much yet, but you do have a large veteran population in your district. Has the issue of immigration in the veteran community or even deportations, has it come up for you yet?
So immigration and deportation actually comes up a lot in terms of the deportation of veterans. Really, until you guys brought it up, it has not been brought up. And the district is my district is heavily Latino. So we actually deal with immigration issues all the time in our office. And largely what we're trying to do is assure that every person that's going through any kind of proceeding is getting their due process. And I think that's something that we as citizens need to really emphasize. The best way for us to assure that our veterans stay here, besides, I think some judicial fixes, but even in the meantime, is to ensure that everyone gets due process, that they have proper representation, that they know their rights, and that they're not automatically pleading guilty because some prosecutor, whether it's some ICE judge or somebody else is saying, well, look, just get this done and get it out of the way. And that's a problem right now with how we deal with immigration services. Immigration no longer is really about enforcement, it's about numbers. It's not about trying to get people to become citizens, it's about trying to impress other members of Congress or to impress the media by saying, look how many people we deported. Not look how many people we have justly deported because we know they're criminals, we know that they are recent people that have crossed the border, but it's because we have to fulfill this insatiable demand by politicians to be able to say that they're tough on the border without proving that you're actually bringing any safety to this country. And as a matter of fact, in my opinion, you're actually making this country less safe because what you're creating are these zones where nobody talks to the police because they're afraid to get deported. And so part of, and if you kind of follow me on politics, some people say I'm a kind of one-trick pony. But I do talk about immigration a lot because it really is affecting a lot of things in our society. But the way that we can quickly deal with this and universally treat everybody equally is to have a deep emphasis in due process. If our veterans had known their full rights and had gotten the ability to have proper representation and had been able to go before a judicial judge, I think many of them would have been able to stay here, or at least not make some mistakes and gotten as quickly deported. For us as advocates out there, that's what I would tell you. The first thing we have to do is make sure that we're always advocating for due process. For anybody, no matter who you are, you have a right as an American citizen, you have due process here.
I just add something to that. I think it's very important what Congressman is saying because when I first started working, I was working in the court system, England, which is a court that is inside the immigration jail. And I was appalled, it was on the news that one of the judges who I knew said that he had a record for doing 66 cases an hour. I mean, that's not due process. And we have to ask ourselves, is that congruent with what this country stands for? 65, 66 cases an hour is less than a minute per person. And that minute, that minute is a whole person's life that is hanging there. So we have to emphasize due process, like the congressman was saying.
Mr. Anatiuda, I know you're a judge advocate, and like our other panelists are mentioning, the system has changed and emphasizing due process is important. Have you seen a shift within, we all know that Post 41 does amazing work in the Hispanic and immigrant community. Have you seen a shift towards more people wanting to, or more veterans wanting to get their naturalization done now?
It's been discussed at our meetings, is it okay? But not enough, quite frankly. We have our general memberships each month. But let me make this comment real quick. This is something that's being read at every convention for the last 100 years. This basically statement summons this whole book that I have here. In the first place, we should insist that the immigrant who comes here in good faith and becomes an American and assimilates himself to us, he shall be treated as an exact equal with everyone else, as it is an outrage to discriminate against any man because of creed, race, birthplace, or origin. But this is predicated upon the person becoming every facet of the American and nothing but American. There can be no division or allegiance here. Any man who says he's an American but something else is not an American. We have room for but one flag, and that is the American flag. And we have one room for one sole loyal, and it's to be loyal to the American flag and the American people. We do not ask and get into the signing whether when our members come in, we ask for a DD 214 in compliance with the national. DD 14, you're good. Now the criminal aspect of it is another issue that we're not getting into, but it's something that really needs to
We'll get into
be
it
looked
briefly. We'll get into it briefly. With that, though, and speaking of application process, Mr. Orsano, we know every modern-day president has either changed, adapted, or shifted in some way or another, messed with the immigration law, which is why we need more people like you that are educated in law. But in 2002, President Bush signed an executive order, and I have the number here. It's 1326-9, and it was meant to expedite the naturalization process for service members and veterans. How did that actually function? Did it actually expedite? Was it a reduction in cost, time? What was that executive order for? And then was it applicable to all veterans, or was it just Iraq and Afghanistan veterans?
Sure. It's that executive order was for starting in September of 2001 to now. So any active duty member or anybody honorably discharged during that time would fall during that time frame. But what it does, it leaves out a lot of other veterans who weren't serving prior to 2001.
Congressman Gallego, we saw on your Facebook page you recently participated in a naturalization ceremony. I remember during my naturalization ceremony, there was a fellow soldier and a fellow Marine there as well, a couple veterans. Do you think enough is being done to facilitate the naturalization process for our veterans and for our service members, past and present?
So I think present, yes. Just kind of talking recently to the DOD and what services they offer, because for the DOD actually allows JAG officers to process immigration paperwork for current military personnel, which is very good because that is usually free or very low cost, unlike civilians who have to go and get immigration lawyer or somebody to give advice how to do it. So I think that's a very significant shift. Now the problem you have are with with veterans, right? Or veterans and their spouses or dependents. That's where you start getting into a bigger problem. And I don't think we are actually facilitating much for the veterans. We're definitely not doing it at the VA. The military isn't really, I think, capable enough to actually do it themselves. But I think this is something that that we should be looking at some of our nonprofits and service veteran organizations doing, and seeing if they could also pick that up, and then seeing what we could do at the federal level too, through legislation.
And we're going to get a little bit into the deportation process here. When we talked to the veterans out in Tijuana, it seems like everyone had a different deportation process. Some of them really reminded me, for those airborne and special ops and infantry, and those of us that did night missions, I mean, they were literally dropped into a foreign country in the middle of the night and told, go, right, with no marching orders. And so what I want to ask of Mr. Solorzano is, what is the actual deportation process like? Is there a guideline that they follow, or is it just take you to the fence and kick you out of the country, or is there a briefing of sorts that happens here?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's very different from place to place and depending on what you did that got you in hot water. But it's been changing. It used to be, well, you did your time, then you had your immigration hearing, and then you would get deported. But now it's somebody gets a DUI, they get sentenced to, say, 4 months, for example. During their first 2 months, they'll get picked up at the jail, taken straight to Eloy, and deported. But what happens there? Well, they didn't actually do their whole time like they were supposed to. So then they still owe the state something, and that's taken against them in immigration proceedings. So it's very unfair, because it's not like they said, hey, take me to immigration court, I don't want to do my time. And it's stacked against them. And that's the kind of things that don't get too much media play, but it's affecting immigrants, because they don't get the chance to do it the right way, like as I was mentioning earlier. And it used to be that they were more relaxed about what crimes would get you deported. It used to be strictly crimes of moral turpitude. Now, I was looking on YouTube at some of the videos of deported veterans. There's people who've been deported for a speeding ticket. So whether that's a crime of moral turpitude is is very debatable. I don't think it is, and it's still getting people deported.
And the other thing to remember is that there is the president passed an executive order 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago? That gives prosecutorial discretion to ICE judges, and it puts the levels of what are the most serious felonies that should be considered first before deportation, before any non-felonious proceedings. So it's important if you actually hear of somebody that is being, for example, deported for a speeding ticket of some sort, you need to tell them right away to demand that they have a lawyer, and more importantly, if it's in my district, give us a call, because we are consistently handling these kinds of things as an office. Again, this is all about due process. Let them go through a judge, let it get decided, but do not let them get rushed out of this country, because that's how you get these veterans deported and put overseas and then not being able to return to this country until they're in the pine box, and that's just ridiculous.
And I think many of our guests here work in different VSOs, Veteran Services Organizations. Mr. Natividad, as a judge advocate, I'd imagine you work a lot with the courts on behalf of veterans. I know we talked about some of them briefly, but what are some of the typical offenses the veterans encounter on their journey to adjusting to civilian life? I know you also are the chaplains.
Well, the transition coming back, first you're looking for a job, and if things go well, you're okay. But let's say you get stopped for DWI, that sort of thing. We're talking a lot about these type of violations. There used to be an expungement. If you have no criminal activity, it's a minor offense, and it's done. We don't, as I indicated, we do not ask for any criminal background or that type of thing. You belong to the Legion if you want to come in. All you need is a DD-14. But if you, as far as the criminal part, we need more to look into that a little bit further. With night court, I had the honor of working with night court specifically for veterans and their specific need. As the congressman said, there are some needs out there that we don't see. There's something behind that. And to punish that man for the rest of his life is totally an injustice. That's why he needs a voice.
And with that, actually, Congressman Gallego, many of the offenses that our deported veterans are committing are a direct result of homelessness and the lack of services that are being provided to them. What is Congress doing to help solve this problem in the veteran community?
Well, I mean, I think Congress, has, if you guys have seen me in the soapbox, I've been saying this, we're very quick to send us to war, but not very quick to serve us as veterans. And, when I got back from the war, I stepped off my last patrol, and then a week and a half later, I was left off my base, and I had no job and no place to live. Luckily, I had a girlfriend who took me in. But I couldn't even work for 6 months just because I was just not right in the head. And, and that's when a lot of us started to get in trouble. The problem with what's happening with our veterans is not just veterans, is that what's happening is there's just an overall society problem where we are essentially criminalizing being poor. And veterans get caught up in that. So veterans end up being homeless, and then what they end up doing is urinating outside, and they get a ticket for urination outside. They can't pay their tickets, then they end up getting an arrest warrant, and they end up not paying the arrest warrant, so these fines just keep on accruing. And if anyone's ever gone to a veteran stand down, you'll actually see that there's tons of veterans that come in and they don't have driver's license because they've been trying to avoid getting a driver's license because they have all these fines they paid because they had this one incident that just continued to roll out. And at that stand down, we tried to expunge their records or clear their records so that way they could move on with their lives. But what Congress has to do is actually have good transitional veteran services. And that actually starts not at the VA, it actually starts in the military. And one of the things that I've been asking a lot from our military branches is for them to have a better transition plan. If you were like me and left the military, do you guys remember those 2 days they gave you of classes? How many of you guys actually, guys and gals, paid attention to that? Very few of you did because you just wanted out so bad and you signed whatever paperwork they gave you and they left. The transition plan should start a year beforehand where the military personnel is required to go in short periods once a month or once every quarter so they could actually start putting their life plan together. Instead of this like 2-day plan where they just push us out into the streets, we're not ready for it. But overall, the bigger problem again is that we do criminalize being poor in this country, and in this state especially. You get a DUI, okay, DUIs are really bad. It costs you, what is it, a year now minimum with a breathalyzer? But a breathalyzer will cost $80 a month, right? So already you're paying insurance, then you have $80 a month that only one company produces, right? Plus the initial hookup fee. So if you're poor, you get a DUI, you're already getting your car probably taken away from you. Your insurance is going to go up even if you do keep your car. Then you have a DUI, then you're going to pay your breathalyzer. And so now the person that makes $30,000 a year probably just lost their job already, and now they're going to go into a spiral effect. That is a problem with not just the federal government. It's a problem at the city level, it's a problem at the county level, it's a problem at the state level. And veterans get wrapped up in it because we will self-medicate ourselves, especially when the VA lets us down.
Mr., you have
A
something?
veteran can't hold a job. You have to go to court 4 or 5 times. They have pretrial conferences. Sometimes you'll go to court and you'll sit there for 2 hours, and they tell you it was recess, it was continued. And you're the last one to know. It's incredible. These men and women entered into agreement with our country on a fast track. I will serve the United States of America, and you want to make sure that your rights are protected.
With that policies and stuff, Mr. Sarsano, President Obama recently put a parole in place policy for veterans and their families. What does this mean? What does this parole in place mean in regards to courts and legal matters?
Okay, parole in place, it's been changing over the years, but now, so basically you need a legal entry to naturalize or to do the, your immigration paperwork. But how are you going to have a legal entry if you're deported? So parole in place grants you that legal entry. So, or even if you're here already, you can use parole in place if you never had a legal entry to begin with. So that's a good tool that we could use, and it's just hard to apply sometimes because on top of that legal entry requirement, there's so many others that it's a hurdle to get. It's hard to get over the hurdle.
And Congressman Gallego, before President Obama announced his immigration reform policy, we actually had the opportunity to meet briefly in a rally in D.C. I don't know if you recall, myself and Alejandro were there. Right, is regarding vets, and you were there championing, as always, the immigration reform for veterans. Was this parole in place policy enough? Do you think that was enough? Was it a move towards the right direction?
Well, parole in place is one key element, I think, of an overall comprehensive immigration reform bill that has to go through. And these are all kind of stopgap measures. So right now we have 3 different forms of executive actions that have recently passed. So we have DACA, deferred actions for children arrivals. We have an extension of DACA, deferred action for children arrivals, which basically shifted the time frames and how long you've been here and when you got here. And then there's DAPA, deferred action for the parents of of U.S. citizens. So if you are in this country without permission, but your kids are U.S. citizens, we are trying to attempt to give you temporary status. 2 of those elements are now being unhold by a judge in Texas. We believe that we will eventually win those court cases, and when I say we, the United States government, will win those court cases. Then we also have prosecutorial discretion, and then also parole in place. Those are good starts. The only problem you have is that you have a lot of ICE directors and judges that will sometimes willingly just ignore this, right? And that's why it is important whenever this happens and you hear of any of your friends, and sometimes I do get these calls, make sure they do not sign anything, make sure they understand their rights, and make sure they get a lawyer. Because with a good lawyer, a decent lawyer actually, just being able to argue, provided you don't have any serious criminal records or a felony or committed anything, you're going to be able to stay here and continue to stay with your family. But you have to make sure you're exerting your rights. Do not expect all ICE officials to be looking out for your best interests. And there's just some of them that are convinced that they have a right to do this, and they're going to ignore the directives of the president. And the more we know who they are, the easier it is for us to deal with them. But they're there, they exist, they're here in Arizona, and that's why the best way to do it, again, is to deal with this, is to make sure you exert your right to due process.
Okay, and I want to give the audience again one more opportunity. Patrick, I see you're still writing, so hurry up, man. Again, don't be a whiner, please. If you have a solution, please post it up.
I'm very shy, but I'll try to overcome it to answer your question.
And please, and your questions, please, as well. Alejandro's going to go around again to pick those up. Hurry up, Patrick, please. And as soon as we start this next round of questions, we'll start with that.
And just one more thing I was thinking about when Congressman Gallegos was talking is that a lot of times people can't afford a lawyer, and what happens, the process is you're at Eloy, right? You're in shackles and you're waiting to have your court case. If you ask for a lawyer, they'll give you a sheet of like 40 different names and their numbers. So you get a call, and there's not many lawyers out there who will do it for free. If you get lucky, you might get it for free, but it might not be right away or what you need. So it's very hard because it's different from criminal cases. In criminal cases, you're afforded a lawyer, but this is an administrative proceeding. So you don't get a lawyer, and you can't afford a lawyer. You can't afford to pay $10,000 bond to get out. So what you do is you wait in jail for 3 months while you get your court date, and then you find out that you can't afford a lawyer. And what do? You get a translator, and the immigration system as it is right now is so hard to navigate. Even for me, I get so confused. I got kind of nervous right now when Luis was asking me about, INA 212 and N400 and IRA and all these terms are complicated. How do we expect these people who sometimes don't even speak the language to master them and represent themselves? So that's another big problem that we have.
Real quick, if you don't have an advocacy group behind you, you can see how the case log are backed up, and you're trying to move it. Someone gets lost in the process. So we need to make sure that doesn't happen.
If you're a veteran and you know a veteran that's going through this, definitely reach out to your member of Congress, no matter what. I mean, we deal with all deportations, things that come before us, but especially if you're a veteran, reach out to us. If you're a veteran in Arizona, feel free to reach out to us anyway, even if we're not in your congressional district. We're here to help all veterans. All veterans are my constituents anyway.
And we're going to have a moment to speak about that also here in a few minutes. But I want to move on to the next portion of it. And a lot of these veterans, we actually had an opportunity, thanks to the Tillman Center and SVA, to speak with the VA secretary a few weeks ago. And he was telling us about how he wants more veterans to use the service. And I mentioned to him there's a group of veterans that would love to use the VA services but can't. Of course, I was referring to our deported veterans. Mr. Natividad, many times our veterans turn to organizations like American Legion Post, like some of the other VSOs that are here present, to get the help they want or they need with the VA claim process. Do you think deported veterans should have a way to file their claims regardless of their deportation status?
Yes. If they come to us, we basically, from our standpoint, we network with all the organizations, whether it be medical, health, legal, and so on. So we'll try to find them the right results for them, where they can get the most help. Again, sometimes it can be a myriad of questions involved in a lot of this, and you need to be able to work your way through it. Again, an advocacy group, and again, such as something that you're mentioning right now, this is not every day that we just sit down and discuss something like this. I'll take it back to my Legion, and then there's a Legion convention coming up. I think it's important to bring that message up and let them know what's going on and how they feel about it.
And Congressman Gallego, the next question's for you. What will it take to get these veterans the care they deserve? Is this an issue for Congress? Can the president do an executive order? Can the VA handle this issue internally?
So I think the VA can handle this issue internally. So if you are a veteran and you were honorably discharged from the military, you should be afforded whatever benefits you are rated, right? And obviously every veteran has different rates depending on your service-connected injury. But just because you later had a criminal conviction does not mean that somehow overturns your right of benefits you accrued while you're in the military. I'll give you a good example if you think about it this way, right? If you have been working for years, you've been paying to Social Security. One day you end up, getting thrown in jail. Social Security doesn't get taken away from you, right? The reason Social Security doesn't get taken away from you is because you paid Social Security for all those years, right? So military benefits that you earned while in the military, provided you left as an honorably discharged member of the military, should be afforded to you. Now, right now we have the first step I think that would be very helpful is that we already offer some veterans the option of being able to not go to the VA for services, and that's with the new system called the Choice Card. Now, the Choice Card hasn't been working out very well. We just asked them to do a couple tweaks to it to allow veterans to be able to get to use Choice Card to go to a local doctor or specialist they need to, and that wasn't limited by geography to 40 miles. I think that we can probably also do the same thing for veterans. And it doesn't just have to be veterans that are deported overseas. There are veterans that also live overseas. I'm sure you guys know a lot of veterans that have retired to other parts of the world. They should still have access to VA benefits. So they certainly have access to VA pension, all right, their military pension, or if they were hurt or injured while in the military, they're getting a VA claim. They should also be able to have some system for them to pay for medical services. That if they have rated it, then they should rate it no matter where they are in the country. No matter where they are in the world, they should be able to take that. It should be transferable.
And we're going to circle back to that. We actually just got a very good question on that. But a lot of the questions, and we're going to move on to the practical solutions. So a lot of the questions that I'm getting have to deal with the Phoenix or the Veterans Court system, rather. The city of Phoenix actually has one of the best Veterans Court system in the nation. They have had tremendous success. They really have. I've been involved with them for a while now as a mentor, and they have had amazing success. So much so that many other cities, even here in Arizona, La Paz, Tempe, Mesa, they're all replicating the Phoenix Veterans Court system. Congressman Gallegos, do you think that this is a system that can be replicated nationally? Can there be a national movement to do this?
Well, there is a national movement to do this, and this has been a fight, for 8 years that a lot of us have been involved in, and the American Legion actually has been, American Legion, the IAVA, and a couple other veterans organizations have been very involved in spreading the word about military veterans courts. Part of it is also the funding needs to be found to train a lot of the prosecutors and city judges, and that's been the hardest problem. We've, at least in Arizona, since I've kind of been involved in the last 2 years with being an advocate for the military courts or the veteran courts, I've been encouraging other members of Congress to actually come and talk to us or see if we could find out some way to get our members from the city of Phoenix, especially the city judges, to go out to their areas to educate them. And also the National Association of Attorney Generals are also already talking about the expansion of veterans courts. So the movement is happening. It's happening slow. The bigger problem I would tell you that you're going to have is with veterans that aren't identifying themselves as veterans, or they get caught up in the legal system. So when they don't do that, then they don't actually fall under the jurisdiction of veterans courts. And also at this point, we're dealing with a lot of veterans that are now multi-year offenders, and they are not they're exempt from being able to use the veterans courts. And again, this goes back to the bigger issue of how we're criminalizing being poor in this country, but at least the veteran courts are a really, really good start. we should expand it as fast as we can, but I think there is a lot of movement behind that.
And I just want to mention, reading through some of your suggestions and questions, we definitely don't have any whiners in this room. But we are short on time, so I'm going to combine a couple questions here as one, because I think we could do that with this question. Is anyone here, is any government entity or agency collecting any data on deported veterans? If so, who? And we saw a lot of male deported veterans. Is the issue of females being female veteran deportations coming up at all? And again, any of you can take this one.
Well, the answer is I don't know, and that's probably a problem. So we're going to look into that. That's a really good question. And when it comes to female deported veterans, because we have a higher propensity of females now that are veterans and are returning with PTSD, both because of enemy action, also because of military sexual assault, I would presume that there are actually a lot of female deported veterans because, again, if they don't receive proper treatment, then they're going to kind of spiral into a situation where they're self-medicating and then they get themselves into a criminal instance and find themselves deported. But I think one of the things that we'll be asking our office is, at least for the process where they're interviewing the people that are going through deportation proceedings, the least we could ask is, have you ever served in the United States Armed Forces? We don't want to ask, have you ever been a veteran? Because if you talk to or are you a veteran? Because you talk to any person and their definition of veteran is very different. But if you ask, have you ever served in the military armed forces, U.S. military armed forces, you'll get a more precise answer. But at this point, I don't know of any governmental agency that is keeping these records, but we can look into that as an office.
And again, we're very short on time, so this will be the last question, and I'll ask it because I get to poke a little bit at you there, Jonathan. But we do have great organizations, and we have an awesome, way more awesome law school than Summit Law School here at ASU. So is there a way we can use our law schools and our nonprofits as a way to maybe provide pro bono services to some of these veterans?
Yeah, definitely. We started something out of the law firm that I worked for. It was a pro bono immigration clinic every Saturday. We'd have people come, but we can do a lot more. I mean, watching the video when the guy said, "Oh, I signed the plea deal," I was cringing because I was thinking, man, I wish I could have been there to say, don't sign that thing, they can't prove it, and all these things. I've had work with students in, as young as middle schoolers who they get interrogated in school by police or by even CBP, immigration officials. And, they don't know their rights. They get into a closet. They don't know that counts as being confined and that they have to, they have rights. And so we could do a lot more to tell people about their rights and get people better prepared, especially veterans, because they've done so much for us. I mean, we can give something back to them, and that's what I'm dedicated to, because it's a worthy cause, and it does merit more attention from everyone. I mean, the group here is good, but more people need to know about this, because there's people outside our borders that are just waiting for somebody to be their voice. So now we have to be their voice when it has to be a loud one. And I thank you, Congressman, for being here, because this is really important. And thank you, Luis.
And with that, actually, I spoke, and Congressman, I didn't get a chance to speak to you, but I spoke with the other panelists, and we have a surprise for you, and I'm not Oprah Winfrey, so there's no car keys under your chairs, but sorry. But we're going to actually forfeit our time for closing remarks. I do want to say thank you to our panelists, but I'm forfeiting our time for a good reason. We actually have, if Chris, amazing opportunity. We didn't know we were going to be able to do this. We found out. I want to thank Chris for being able to provide this opportunity for us. We have Hector Barajas here, and we were actually able to Skype this presentation to them. And so they had a little viewing party and a get-together out in Tijuana, and they were able to view this presentation.
Hey, guys.
And so, Hector, hermano, I know this is symbolic, brother, but I'm going to go ahead and get up, and this is your chair, so you can have your due place here with the fellow panelists, and you can maybe provide some closing remarks for us, brother.
Sure. First of all, I want to thank everybody, because this is the first time we've ever done this, as far as talking points and being able to Skype with any Congress and being in a conference. So I want to thank Congressman Ruben Gallego, Juliana Natividad, Jonathan Solano, the ASU campus, and Luis Cardenas and Brian Ford for actually coming out here to visit us, and also to give honor to one of our brothers that recently passed away. Basically, what we're asking for is a change in legislation and to raise awareness to keep these talking points going, and at the very least, help us with our benefits. Right now, I have VA appointments in San Diego and Los Angeles, but I'm not able to go because I'm deported. And all we want to do is return to our families, and we put our lives on the line. And I think if I'm going to be eligible, I'm eligible to be buried as an American. I should be able to live my life as an American in the United States. I currently have a life deportation, but I'm also in the process of filing for my citizenship. Just because there was a ruling in 2011 that my particular case is not deportable. But other than that, I'm going to end up, if nothing changes, I'm going to go home in a casket and be buried in this uniform. But I wouldn't take it back because I love my country, and I'm an all-American. I served with the 82nd Airborne, and it's my country, and I love America. So thank you guys, and we're just we're hanging there, and this is awesome. This is the first time we've ever done this before. So veterans have been deported since 1996, so it's taken us a long time to get here. So I'm really excited. This is awesome. I'm excited.
Thank you for all your work, Hector, and I think thank you for bringing this attention to me. You guys bring this attention to me, and I think we're going to see what we can do. And obviously, it's not easy, but we'll gladly start moving the ball forward.
Thank you.
God bless you, brother, and keep the faith. We go to the National quite often,
Sure.
and to honor our veterans, it's incredible. Their families are there, and to see them divided, something has to be done.
And that's one of the most important things. I have a 9-year-old daughter. Her mother has multiple sclerosis. I'm not able to be with my family, and that, we're supposed to be a country of values, of Christian values, or just American values, and we don't separate our families. We're willing to put our lives on the line. There's guys that were drafted and went to Vietnam. They didn't go to Canada. They didn't go to Mexico. They stayed and fought, and they came back with post-traumatic syndrome, and they got deported. There was a failure in the chain of command and the failure for the soldiers to get their citizenship. But let's we can start pointing fingers all day, but let's change these laws and get these guys home. At the very least, their benefits. That's something that we can't be denied to us.
And with that, we're actually going to end today's panel. We were past about a minute. Hector, brother, we love you. Stay strong. We'll keep up the good fight, brother.
Hoa.